Hi, I'm James McGuire, and on today's eSpeaks, we're talking about an emerging technology that many companies are now just grappling with understanding, and that is cloud native. Not just using cloud computing, but being fully all the way cloud native, which was once a pretty exotic leading edge format and is now becoming far more common. To discuss that, I'm joined by a major industry expert. With me is Danny Fields, CTO of Avalara. Danny, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hi, James. Very nice to meet with you. And as you said, I'm the CTO at Avalara. And here at Avalara in engineering, we're building all of our solutions to be cloud native. So very happy to talk to you about this topic today.
Fantastic. I'm hearing the accent. I'm going to take a wild guess on the accent. I know some people might say England. I'm going to guess Ireland for that accent.
You're spot on. I'm really happy that you got it. Yeah, some people say England, some say Scotland, some say, oh my God, New Zealand, Australia. I've even had South Africa. So good for you for getting it right.
Interesting. All right. So we're glad you're here. Let's look at the cloud, the current environment for cloud native. Are companies really embracing it? It's definitely, it's a complicated, newfangled technology for a lot of companies. Is it seen as too challenging? What's your view?
You know, it's a great question, and a lot of companies are embracing it. And if you look at the data, I think IDC says 35% of all production applications will be cloud native in 2022. And many companies embrace cloud native for the benefits, and the benefits are really, really clear. You don't have to spend resources, that's time and people managing the physical hardware and the servers that we used to manage in the old days. I've been doing this for 30 years. And when I started my career in engineering, we had to manage physical data centers and physical servers. And now when you work in a cloud native environment, you don't have to do that. Somebody else manages the equipment for you. Also, in a cloud native environment, the cloud native providers will provide you portfolios of services that you can use. So you can select, I want to use this database, that service. You don't have to go build it yourself. So it saves you some time and some money. And then in a cloud native environment, you get scalability, reliability, performance, security, and all that global stuff that you hear people talk about when they refer to AWS or GCP or Azure. So there are some challenges with going cloud native, but the benefits are well worth it.
Do you think there's a sense among companies that, well, we know it's a better, hotter, faster version, but we're just doing regular cloud computing, some lift and shift now. We're not really quite ready for that. I guess the problem is it's better once you get set up, but setting up is harder. Is that correct?
That's a very, very good question. And when we started our move to the cloud, to the public cloud providers back in 2018, we saw some of those challenges, and we heard people talk about some of the challenges. And the typical challenges people will refer to are cost, time, and application design. And by the way, we've always been in the cloud since we started the company nearly 18 years ago. So let's talk about each one of those. So for cost, for any size company, the financial cost to shift over to the cloud, to lift and shift, will be significant in the beginning. When you shift a legacy system into a public cloud provider, the initial cost will frighten you. One of the tips I want to pass on to everybody is make sure your agreements with the cloud vendors are as good as they can be and that you get the best deal possible. And there are companies, vendors, experts in the industry who can help you get those best costs. And likewise, when you shift over to a cloud native environment, it's going to take some time to get your applications to work well in that environment. So bear in mind the cost of the time it's going to take to move into the cloud native environment. And one last thing on cost, the cloud native providers make it easy for developers to turn on compute, to spin up services, to go use their services. But they make it difficult or not so easy to monitor and control your costs. So one of the things we do, and I see a lot of other companies doing, is make sure that you're cutting out the fat in your environment. You want to make sure, just like in your home, when you're going to bed at night, you walk around your house, you turn off light switches, you make sure that you're not wasting electricity at night. So there are methods working with some specialist vendors in the industry, or just within your own engineering team, to identify servers that are not being used during the night, maybe you can turn them off after the developers are not using them and turn them back on again in the morning the next day. When it comes to time is a huge challenge. It can take a long time to actually lift and shift into a cloud native environment. You've got to do that initial shift, then you have to go make your applications work well within that environment so they can be elastic, so they can scale, so they can be reliable, so they can be secure. All of that doesn't come for free. So the time, it could take a year to take an existing application and to get it to work properly in a cloud native environment. And people don't think of that in the beginning. They don't think about the cost and they don't think about the time. And then the last piece is the design of the application or the architecture of the application. Whether you're a brand new company starting from scratch, working in AWS or GCP or Azure, or whether you're lifting and shifting from on-prem or from some other environment into this public cloud, you have to take application design into account. You have to go back and you have to make sure your application is designed to go work in that environment properly. You have to make sure that your application is designed to be elastic. You have to make sure your application is designed to be reliable, that it can work across multiple servers and data centers and so on. All of that doesn't come for free. So I saw it again back in 2018 when we went into a public cloud environment. The assumption was you get all of this for free. No, you don't. You start with lift and shift, and then you have to make changes to make your application work perfectly in a cloud native environment.
Interesting. So it has a lot of advantages, but as you mentioned, some of those advantages do require investment. Makes perfect sense. You've talked about this a little bit, certainly. I mean, if you think about a headache that many companies might have, they're up and running with cloud native. They thought it was going to be great, and maybe they run into a little of a situation. It's like, oh no, that's a big challenge. Like, what might be a typical challenge? And you have talked about them somewhat, but some headache that companies have, and what advice might you offer to help them with that?
A very typical challenge will be reliability. People think when you go into a cloud native environment, your application will be super reliable. Pick your favorite public cloud vendor, and you always hear that they're always up. They don't have outages. Well, most developers build an application to work really well on one server, on one computer. But sometimes the servers can die. And what happens if your application is only built to work on one server? So one of the challenges I've seen and we've had to overcome is to redesign our applications to run across multiple servers, multiple data centers. I'd say that's something that developers have to get their head around, and they need to design reliability into their application from the beginning.
Interesting. All right. So that does require some specific action. Let's talk about Avalara itself. I mean, Avalara, from what I've read about it, it's working on building the next cloud designed for compliance. What does that mean to build a cloud designed for compliance?
That is a great question, and a lot of people watching have probably never heard about Avalara. And Avalara is building, I guess, what we call the next big cloud for compliance that most people have never heard about. So just like Avalara being a technology company, it's one of the biggest technology companies building something big that most people haven't heard about. Our mission is to be part of every transaction in the world. And I want to explain the why first before I get into what our cloud is and how it works. So we want to be part of every commerce transaction in the world. And we don't take this very lightly. If you think about it, there are trillions and trillions of transactions happening in commerce all across the planet in hundreds of countries around the world. And the transactions are different. Now look at a transaction. We think about a tax transaction that just calculates tax. But in a commerce situation, you're not just calculating tax. There might be an action you take before that happens. You might have to register a business, get a license, do something regarding a customs activity, file a tax return. There's an entire workflow around this transaction. And we want to be involved in every kind of commerce transaction, the full compliance workflow in every country in the world for every type of compliance transaction. That's trillions of transactions. So our technology needs to scale, needs to be global, and needs to be able to handle all of that. And in order to do it, how do we do it? We do it with partners, developers, third parties who will help us build the compliance applications to do all of this work. Avalara has been around for nearly 18 years, and we've built a number of solutions ourselves. But in order to be part of every transaction on the planet, what we're doing is we're taking the platform that we have today and we're expanding it. The third parties, the partners that work with us, we're opening up our platform so they can bring more transactions to Avalara. And we've always had a platform from when the company started. We've been building integrations to every kind of ERP and marketplace and point of sale system that you can think of. We have over 1,000 integrations built today, and there are thousands more integrations to be built in the future. So what we're doing is we're taking the platform that we have, and we're taking the building blocks that we have created over the years inside of Avalara to build the solutions that we provide to our customers today. And we're going to make these building blocks available to all of our partners, to third-party developers, so they can build additional compliance applications for their markets in different parts of the world, and they'll bring those transactions to Avalara, to our platform. And this is how we're going to become part of every compliance transaction in the world.
That's pretty interesting. And there's no doubt that that is a big ambition for the future. Speaking of which, I'd love to get your sense of the future of cloud, the future really of cloud native. I mean, I think we've talked about it's still newish for many companies. I mean, what do you see happening over the next few years in cloud native?
You know, it's a really, really good question. And what I see happening at the moment is I see companies like Avalara thinking about what's called multi-cloud or polycloud.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us have spent a number of years working in a single cloud environment, working with one of the major public clouds. But now we're rebuilding our applications, and we're being required by our customers and partners to run in multiple public clouds. And when I say multiple public clouds, think AWS or GCP or Azure. And why do we have to do that? Well, a number of reasons. One, customers want it. Customers are now demanding to companies like Avalara and others that their data be processed in specific cloud environments. So they are requiring us now to make sure our applications run not just in one public cloud, but in multiple. The second one is reliability. In order to make sure a service like Avalara is always up, we make sure that we can run on multiple servers in multiple data centers, but we're also making sure for reliability reasons, we can run across multiple public clouds. And then another reason for running in a multi-cloud or poly-cloud environment is to take advantage of all the different strengths that each public cloud can provide. So AWS might have some specific strengths, or GCP might have some, or Azure might have specific strengths, for example. So if you're running an application, for example, in AWS, you may want to call out to a service running in GCP to perform a specific task, or out to a service running in Azure to perform a specific task. So now developers can build applications that can run multi-cloud, poly-cloud, and take advantage of the best functionality and tasks that each one has to offer, if that makes sense.
It really does. It's a fascinating idea, and I've heard something about that. So really, it's a company would have one application literally built for multi-cloud. Would it typically be built in the beginning with AWS and Azure and GCP in mind, or could you build it probably with AWS and Azure in mind, and later you'd add GCP, maybe Oracle and IBM, or how would that work?
You know, that's a really, really good question, and I've been in a number of cloud companies where we've had that challenge, and we've asked that question: do you build specifically for one public cloud, or do you build so your application is portable or will work across multiple clouds?
Right.
And different companies do it different ways. You can do either. I guess in an ideal situation, you should be building your application maybe to be containerized, so you can take that container and you can deploy it to run in multiple clouds. And that's what Avalara is doing. We have specific services that we want to make available to our customers to run anywhere. And we're providing solutions to our customers that they will be able to run in AWS, in GCP, in Azure, even in their own on-prem data center, wherever they want. And you can do that by building the application in a container, and you can run it wherever the customer wants. So it's a great question, and it's really a design choice that companies need to make when they go decide how to build in a cloud native environment.
Gotcha. Danny, I think you said it. It's going to be a fascinating sector to watch. I wish you all the best with Avalara. Hope you come back and talk with us again sometime. Thank you very much.
It was a pleasure spending time with you, James. Great to meet you. Great to be here. Thank you.